Good morning and welcome to the July 28th, 2025 Finance Committee meeting for the Lee Summit School District. We'll begin with item 1.01 and 1.02. Both will be addressed by either Dr. Hutchinson or Dr. Barger. Dr. Hutchinson, I see you're there.
Yep, I am here.
The first item is Everway renewal.
Okay, so questions around that. Do we have specific questions or just what the product is, Dr. Shelton?
Why don't you just provide a brief
Okay,
description? Brief
perfect.
description, yes.
Okay, Everway used to be formerly Text Help. So that is actually our tool that we overlay all of our websites and all of our learning management systems that do the basically that read write function and the availability to translate certain functions. It's also the one that we use for a lot of our IEP and 504 accommodations. They got bought this last year, and so we were grandfathered the last previous years under the previous company at a license rate and a population rate of about 1,500 and $1.85 a license. With the purchase of being bought out, we finally saw the uplift, and then we also had increased our total license usage by about 300 kids. So that's why you kind of see the jump in the Everway.
So there's an increase in the number of students being served, as well as there's an increase in the price per license.
So when we were grandfathered in the previous one, we were sitting right about, they were counting us about 1,500, 15,500 students. So with the new rollover, with all licensing going to all students now, we are sitting right about 17,886 licenses. So you see a jump, not only just in license accounted for and usage, but then also the uplift in the per license cost.
Very good, thank you. Are there any questions about this item?
Nope. I had a question, but Dr. Hutchinson just answered it, so I'm good.
And that also is part of Orbit Note too. Sorry, Orbit Note is also under that contract, and that's what our IEP students use for math calculation too. So that's what you see that secondary line for as well.
Outstanding. Thank you, Dr. Hutchinson. Moving on to 1.02 CAMI renewal. Go ahead and pick that up.
Okay, so CAMI renewal. CAMI is what a lot of us use to do our make copies of our lessons. So instead of physical paper copies, about 5 years ago with COVID, we had purchased CAMI, and we have used them on and on for the last 5 years. But that is a renewal that we saw an increase in, but that also allows us to make a copy of anything a teacher makes and then give a virtual copy for students to either write on, work with, speak what they need to over like a lesson. And then also it does a bunch of other functions such as like a PDF writer. We use it also as a learning tool because you can use highlighters, rulers over the top of that too. So it kind of serves multiple functions. They sent us some numbers on that too. So in this last year, they said we used almost over 1 million virtual copies. And if we put that into paper, which is like 13 cents a copy, we almost saved about $130,000 in paper copies. So that's always really good to see. So it is a highly used product. And then we kind of get to see the cost savings that we see the usage at the end of the year too.
Very good. Thank you, Dr. Hutchinson. Are there any questions about CAMI?
Nope.
All right,
you.
Dr. Hutchinson, I know you're off to another meeting,
Yeah.
so good luck and have a great day.
All right. Thank you, guys.
All right, moving on to 1.03. Moving on. Oh, was it another question?
Nope.
All right. All right, moving on to some activities. And then there are a handful of.
Dr. Shelton, your connection is going in and out.
All right, is it back?
Yes.
All right. Well, this for the benefit of the group, there are a number of us who are attending a conference at the lake, and sometimes connectivity here is a little questionable. So hopefully it'll stay connected. All right, moving on to 1.03 contracts under 15,000. The items on this list are pretty typical for this time of year. A number of items from the spring that are being cleaned up, such as hotel rooms for activities and athletics, and then a handful of items that are being prepared for the start of the school year. Were there any questions about any items that are on this list?
Nope.
All right, thank you. Moving on to 1.04, contracts over 15,000. Anything that's any contracts that are new or any contracts who are experiencing an increase of over the CPI, which is 2.9%, will be presented later in this meeting. Most items on this list will be covered. There are one or two items that aren't covered later in this meeting. But were there any questions about any items that are on this list? Nope.
Nope.
All right, very good. All right, moving on then to 1.05. Final graphics, Mrs. Battaglia.
Good morning.
Good morning.
We were noticing and purchasing a growing trend for vinyl graphics in our schools and other buildings. We use these for safety reasons on windows where the buildings can see out, but patrons cannot see in, and to promote school spirit in our high schools and middle schools. Just a plethora of uses within our district. And we decided that it would be beneficial to go out for bid, do an RFP for these services, and award a district-wide contract, which is what we did. We put it out and had a committee of principals and assistant principals, ADs, a group that kind of took a look at that and evaluated the proposals, and they decided to award to 3 of the 4 that proposed or gave us a proposal. And so we're recommending an award to Summit Litho, AdTrends, and Dynamic Displays. And all 3 of those vendors have done work previously in our district on just a one-to-one building basis. And this will allow our folks to choose who they want to work with and just get a simple quote and then have the work be done. So we are recommending a 1-year contract with a possibility of 3 one-year renewals. And I'll take any questions that you might have at this time.
Nope. I had a question and you already answered it, so I'm good.
Oh, great. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Battaglia. Moving on to item 1.06, the 2025-2026 meal price increase. Mrs. Denala.
Good morning. All the school nutrition departments across the U.S. are really struggling right now due to rising food costs, supply cost, equipment, operational, and our reimbursement rates aren't keeping up with what our expenses are, and we haven't even gotten what our reimbursement rates are going to be for the upcoming year. Last year they were right around $2.40 for a breakfast and just right at $4 for a lunch, and that barely, if it does, covers the cost of the meal. So that's why we're all struggling. We should have raised prices this year by 75 cents by using the meal equity tool, but we decided to form a nutrition prat to figure out how to get to where we need to be so we don't affect families and give them too much of a hardship. So we are recommending a 10-cent increase this year. And with the prat being formed, we will figure out what our increases will be over the next 3 years to meet what we need to be at. So our meal prices would raise to, for breakfast, full pay price would be $2 for elementary and $2.10 for secondary, and lunch would be $3.10 for elementary and $3.30 for lunch. Do you have any questions?
Yeah, I've got a couple questions on this. So the Pratt that's being formed, is that something that's already happening, or is that something that has to be approved by the board at a regular meeting? How does that
So,
work?
so a charter will be developed and then presented to the superintendent's leadership team. The superintendent's leadership team will review it, and then it'll be approved at that level. And then the Pratt will be formed and conducted this fall. My assumption would be that we would be able to complete this work this fall. And then that information would go back to the superintendent's leadership team, but then eventually with likely a presentation to the board or information maybe in the update to the board.
Okay, so the board will just be updated on that. Got
Yes.
it. Okay. And now who would be on a Pratt like that? So it all would be internal to the district? It
No,
wouldn't be.
it would be obviously district staff, but it would also include parents. It likely could include a board member or two on that committee as well. But it would be a representative of our stakeholder group who would be impacted by this decision.
Okay. And you mentioned that this is an issue nationwide. So were there any thoughts to include like neighboring district members as part of the Pratt, or like in
Well,
terms of learning what they're doing, or?
we definitely will bring in information from neighboring districts. Lori has a great relationship with not just our neighboring districts, but districts all around the state and the nation. And we'll be able to pull in information and resources from outside the district to help inform the decision. And if it seems advantageous to bring in an outside person from another district, we definitely would do that.
Okay. And I apologize if you already mentioned it in the description that we read, but um, the do you know, like, how do our meal prices compare to neighboring districts? Are we below? Are we about average?
Right now, everybody's in the same boat. They're waiting to get their new meal prices approved. Normally, I have a chart this time of the year that says what everybody does because they approved meal prices early, but there are districts across Missouri and the US that are raising anywhere from 10 cents to $1 a meal trying to get caught up. So I'm hoping to have that completed meal price chart done within probably the next 30 days after everybody's board meetings are done. But we're usually right there with everybody else.
Mhm. Okay. All right. Thanks. I
And
think, oh, go
And
ahead.
Board Member Dawson, we'll
Mhm.
as soon as we have that done, we'll provide that to the board in a weekly update or in some other form of communication.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much for those clarifications. I appreciate it. This is a tough one.
This is a tough one. Dr.
Yes.
Herzog will dig a little deeper into the finances of this as we go through our financial update in his portion of the meeting.
Mm.
And
Okay,
one
thanks.
thing I'd like to add with you being a new board member, nutrition departments are a self-supporting department, and we don't receive funding from the district. We just receive funding from the meals we serve and our a la carte. So we want to stay in the black because if we go in the red and our reserves are gone, then it's going to have to come out of the education fund, and we do not want that. So we're just trying to stay where we need to be to stay in the black.
I agree wholeheartedly, and I appreciate all the work you're doing to do that.
As a good friend of mine said, it's not for profit, but it's also not for loss.
Right.
Exactly.
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 Appreciate
All
it.
right.
Now, will a little bit of this update be given? I noticed in the agenda for Thursday night's meeting, it's just in the items for consent, which means it won't be discussed. So, so is this the forum in which it's being communicated to the board here today?
Yes. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right. Thanks. Thank you very much for answering all my questions.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Danella. All right, moving on to item 1.07 KVC. And I believe this is Dr. Mathis.
Yes, good morning. This is for a contract for a private agency. On a student's individualized education program, there is a continuum of services that we offer for students. One of those placement options is a private separate day program. You could compare that to public separate day program, which is our Miller Park Center. And this is like one step beyond that for students who require more intensive support for both their behavior, social, emotional needs, and academics. So this is a contract for students' enrollment that requires a private separate day program for their IEP services. Do you have any questions?
Nope. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Dr. Mathis. Moving on to
Thank you.
1.08, overdrive. And I believe that's Mrs. Taylor.
Yes, hello, good morning. So Overdrive is the service or the company that we use for our ebooks, audiobooks, and also at the secondary level, we use it for our e-magazines. In the past, we've done our purchasing kind of separate. Secondary has purchased in one way and elementary in another. This year, we've combined all of that together. And we've also increased a little bit of what we're going to be spending on our digital collection as we've seen an increase in its use. So do you have any questions?
Nope. But I can say that my daughters use it all the time. So
Outstanding.
Great. Excellent.
All right, moving on to 1.07 Wilson language training. Dr. Kinney.
Good morning. This is for Wilson reading. And so this is our most intense intervention at part of our MTSS. This contract is really for some training, not only for our new people, but also for certification for a couple of individuals. A few years ago, we identified a teacher in the district who will be serving as a Wilson trainer. And so this year we are finishing up that practicum as well as the training, so that moving forward, we can do our training in-house. Are there any questions I can answer for you?
nope. Thanks.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Dr. Kinney. All right, moving on to 1.10 athletic trainers for Lee Summit High School. And let's see here. Who has this one? Dr. Lindquist? Yes. Dr.
That would be me.
Yes.
Good morning.
Good morning.
This contract is to maintain the level of service we currently provide at our middle and high schools. It is to Children's Mercy, and it provides athletic training to Lee Summit High School specifically. Are there any questions with this?
Yeah, so I'm just curious about, so who is the provider at Lee Summit North and Lee Summit West then, if this is the one contract that we're looking at renewing this year?
So the providers at Lee Summit North and Lee Summit West are teacher associates, and they receive a stipend for athletic training. And we were not able to hire a teacher associate that would be certified for athletic training for Lee Summit High School this year.
Okay, and was that the case at Lee Summit High School last year, that it was, I mean, was there another vendor or was it a teacher associate a year, I mean, is this a new contract, I guess is what I'm asking.
Yes, it's a new contract, and there was a teacher associate last year.
Okay. So I think that answers the other questions I had. Okay, so a teacher is that you have an employee in the building who provides that service. Is that what you mean?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, got it. And so would we ever go back to that if there were someone at Lee Summit High School, or is this the preferred method moving forward?
If we could find somebody for the position, I believe we would go back, but with the year contract, we'll see how this goes. I think we also have to see how it goes with Children's Mercy for the year.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay. All right. Thank you for answering my questions.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Nope.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Lindquist. All right, moving on to 1.11 IXL renewal. And I believe that is Dr. Janeway.
It is. Good morning.
Good morning.
So the next three agenda items are mine. This is the time of year we renew a lot of curricular resources. This particular resource, IXL, is a digital online practice tool. It's a subscription license. It's being used in various capacities throughout the district, but about 4 years ago, 3 years ago, I think actually, we consolidated our contract with IXL because it was being used most frequently in our middle schools. And so instead of each middle school contracting separately, the curriculum department has taken that on. So this is a combination of math, language arts, and in some cases, social studies and or science licenses for practice for all of our middle school students. The price increase is really a product of, again, it's a common trend we're seeing with a lot of our resources. We have a lot of vendors that are removing their volume discounts while they also increase their per student pricing. So that is what's reflected here in this particular contract. What questions might I answer?
No questions.
All right. Dr. Shelton, you want me to just keep plowing through?
Yes, please.
Okay. So the next one on the list is Pear Assessment. This is actually an assessment platform. It's in the past, it was called Edge Elastic, so that's a name that a lot of folks are more familiar with. They were purchased by Pear, and now the product is called Pear Assessment. We have been using this for the last several years to design virtual or digital assessments for our math students in particular. Our LMS doesn't have quite the same level of functionality when you get into math design. And so this year, as a product of all of the curriculum work that we've done, our 6 through 12 math department and our core pathways are all going to be using peer assessment to measure student learning. And so we went from only purchasing licensing for our middle schools, and now we are including our algebra, geometry, and algebra 2 courses as well. Questions?
No questions.
All right. And then finally, we have Vista Higher Learning. So this contract is really a reflection of a multi-year dual product contract. This is a company that creates language learning resources for higher level and for online. And so we have purchased both Descubre and Galleria. They service our online Spanish 1 and 2 students, and then also our heritage Spanish speakers. And these are 6-year contracts for both of these products, which is actually a really great opportunity and great price.
Great, thanks.
All right, thanks.
All right, thank you, Dr. Janeway. Moving on to section 2, the finance section. Dr. Herzog, you have the next 3 agenda items.
Good morning. I'm going to start out with item 2.01. That's the 2020 bond closeout and our arbitrage liability payment. This is not a typical finance committee item, and it actually on the board agenda will show up as a item for decision for consent and not as a finance item for decision. I did submit it, so that's why I'm going to take this item. So what this is, there's 2 parts to this. The PDF attached is a large report of all of the expenditures that took place during the 2020 bond. So everything that we spent on projects from start to finish so that it is transparent, everyone can see it. It's actually a fantastic report that Gilmore and Bell put together for both the board, our school district, and our community. As part of that, though, you'll notice that the item for decision on this is the arbitrage liability payment. So I want to explain real quick what arbitrage is. So essentially what arbitrage is the amount of money you are earning through interest above what you're paying on the bonds. So for instance, just as an example, if we were paying 4% on the bonds to those that invested with us and we were earning 5%, that 1% difference is arbitrage liability. So the IRS does not allow you to keep all that. They don't penalize you. They just say you can't have all that money because you can't invest money higher than you're paying out on it. However, they do have some timeline pieces in there that allow us to use that money as long as we spend it within a certain amount of time. So what this is, this 362,050, and actually that 50 should be 52. I've already emailed Linda about that. The document has the correct number. But that is the amount that we owe back to the IRS above what we were allowed to have. So any questions on that particular item?
Nope. Thanks for that explanation.
And I will just go on to say we have already identified for the 2025 bond a plan to monitor arbitrage. We are right now below. We are in the negative. We are earning less right now in the market than we're paying. So this right now is not a concern. All right, moving on to item 3.02, transfer of funds. This is a standard monthly item that you'll see every month. This month is a larger amount than usual. So $16,789,455.48. That is very typical for the month ending in June because we do process 2 large payrolls in June. So June and July payrolls for our certificated staff do happen both in June. We book those in June. That's why that number is larger. Any questions on that?
Nope. Thanks.
All right, the final item that I have is the treasurer's report. And we're going to start with the revenue and expense report. So you'll notice this is for the month ending June 30, 2025. So this is also our FY25 year-end numbers. And the estimated budget amounts that you'll see there are reflective of the amendment that Mr. Holder did in June. So we did go back and we amended the budget in June. So those numbers do reflect that. Let's start at the top left with revenue. And looking at operating fund revenue, you'll notice that we came in a little bit above, which is great, except for the fact that we did lower that number on our estimate several times throughout the year. So that isn't necessarily reflective of, it is a positive, certainly, that we came in ahead, but we would have liked to have been even higher than that. Teachers fund side came in a little bit below where we even anticipated in June. We had several factors that impacted that I believe we've made the board aware of with our ECSE, which is state funding that comes in, and then also with state funding coming in a little lower than we thought overall. I will just note, since we're talking about revenue, that even though those numbers there in operating and in the special revenue fund came in lower, we knew why they were going to come in lower. We anticipated money for early childhood special education, our title funds, and then also our special education Part B. And the good news already is that we already received in July our early childhood special education funding that we did not receive last year. So we've already realized that for July, it'll show up in next month. Our title funding, we were able to submit for all of our title funding that we didn't receive last year, and that was approved. We should receive that also in July. And then our special education Part B money, we have not submitted for that with our final expense report, but we will. That opens up on Friday of this week. So we should see all of those revenues that we didn't see in FY25 in FY26. Moving over on debt service. Debt service came in exactly where we thought it would, or very, very close to where we thought it would be. Bond, you'll see that we have a lot more bond revenue this particular month. We did book all of the bond sale from June this month, so that number is much, much larger than it was previously. And then capital projects revenue came in very, very close to where we thought it was going to be. Moving over on the restricted side, nutrition services. We talked a little bit about this previously with Ms. Danella, and I'll go into a little more here, more toward the bottom when we get to the fund balances. But we did come in just a little bit under in nutrition services, activity, LSEF. All three came in a little bit under revenue projections, but very, very close. And then before and after school services actually exceeded revenue by just slightly. Any questions on the revenue side?
Nope. Thanks.
On the expense side, which is the major reason why we amended the budget in June. So we did do that amendment because we wanted to ensure that our expenses that we budgeted, our actuals came in below that we didn't exceed it. And you'll notice across the board, we did do that. So in the operating fund, we came in just below what we expected, about 99.68. And then on the special revenue side, 99.84. So very, very close to where we were last year after the amendment for the year over year. The only area we came in very far under was our bond expenditures. If you'll notice there, the expenses were only 75% of what we predicted. And that does happen with bond projects. We aren't always able to expend the dollars in the month we believe we will. Those dollars will be expended later. They just weren't expended in the month of June. On the restricted side, you will notice that in nutrition services, we are a little bit heavy. We're a little bit over in that particular fund. And that does not require an amendment. We are okay there because those dollars, while we break them out as their own fund, those dollars really are operating funds in the eyes of the state. And so when we do our ASBR with the state, you'll see a lot of those dollars that we expend in that fund in both capital projects and in operating, even though we did exceed a little bit. And then also in the expenses with the activity, LSEF, before and after school services, we came in pretty much as projected in June. Any questions on the expense side?
Nope, thanks.
All right, let's go to the bottom left and talk about year-end fund balance. And do remember that this fund balance is not reflective of the ASBR fund balance, actually. The ASBR fund balance does pull in nutrition services, activity, LSEF, and before and after school services. And we've just broken out the operating fund at the bottom. But you'll notice we came in lower than what we had anticipated for the year overall. But as I said, if we'd realized close to $3 million of revenue that we had expected in FY25, that number that fund balance would have been higher. It's still a healthy fund balance at $69,874,000. It's still a very healthy fund balance and in a good place, above what our CSIP says we should be at. So feeling okay about that at this point, especially knowing that those revenues are coming in that we'd expected last year. And then on the far right, restricted fund balances, I'll highlight one very, very positive. You notice before and after school services on the far right. This time last year, that fund was in the negative, and that fund now is positive, $196,000. So a lot of great work happened with our before and after school services program to ensure that programs could sustain itself. Activity and Lee Summit Ed Foundation, those should be break even for the most part. Funds we pretty much end what the actual fund balance last year was just off by about $12,000 from what it is now. And then as Ms. Danella talked about earlier with the PRAD with meal prices, you will notice that the fund balance in nutrition services did drop over $1 million from the end of FY24 to the end of FY25. That is a meal price item that needs to be looked at, and you'll notice also we have high expenses compared to our revenues that come in. So I'm very hopeful that PRAD can come up with some good recommendations that we can use to ensure that particular fund remains in the positive. If we continue with one more year like we had this year, that fund would not be in the positive. So it does need some addressing, which is in the work.
And to that point, mill prices are part of the solution. They will not be the solution, even if we raised mill prices to the limit we could. That would not generate enough revenue to fill the gap. So it's a revenue. There'll be a resolution on the revenue side, but also that we have to find some reduction in expenditures as well. And we're working with Ms. Danella on that as well. So,
are there any questions overall on the rest of the finance and revenue report?
Nope. Thanks for the presentation.
All right, moving on to the investment report. Okay, some actually very interesting things happening with our investments coming up soon. If you'll notice at the very top there with UBS, the very top item has a maturity date that FHLB agency fund that has already passed July 14th. So we did already reinvest those funds. You'll notice the coupon rate currently on that one was 0.74%. We were able to reinvest that on the 14th of July into a treasury with it paying 3.82%. So a nice increase in that particular investment. And that investment is also going to mature out in 2028. So we pushed that out a little bit to make sure that our ladder has enough rolling off, has enough of our investments rolling off currently, and then we have enough pushed out long term to continue to earn the best possible percent we can. Also, if you notice, the next item looks like the FNMA agency investment for $1 million. That actually matures tomorrow. So I'm working with Tim at UBS on that investment, looking into where we can invest that. That also has a low coupon rate of 0.5%, and we should be able to get something similar to what we did with the previous one. Another note that won't show up on this month, but you'll see it next month. If you look down a little farther, it's the FFCB agency, not the next one down, but the one farther down on the list that matures in July of 2027. It's got a 5% coupon rate. That had a callable date, so it could be called early. It had a callable date for tomorrow, and that investment has been called. So we are going to receive our principal and interest up to this point back, but we won't have that 5% investment moving forward, which is pretty common when interest rates are in the 3s and 4s, and with potential for them dropping. Somebody who's paying out 5%, if they can call that now, they're probably going to, and want to have investments that are a little bit lower. So we will reinvest that one as well. It will not be as high as 5%. We'll probably be in the high 3s or low 4s on that, but those will all show up next month. So truly, if you look also just back at the top, the month of August, we have some exciting investments rolling off, meaning low interest rates that we're going to be able to replace with higher interest rates, and then ensure that we have a ladder that allows us to have good investments rolling off and then good investments for the long term as well. Any questions on the UBS side?
Nope, I had a question and you answered it already. Thanks.
All right. And then if you look at the bottom, just on our liquid accounts, these are the accounts that we can access on a daily basis, and we do to pay our bills. Those are still paying very, very well, over 4% currently. There's been talk and there's constant talk of rates dropping. I was just having a conversation with all of our investment managers, and they are still relatively confident we're going to see a rate drop here in the next 6 months or so. But in the meantime, the 4.2% that we're receiving is fantastic. You'll also notice a new item below. It's the MOCAT liquid and term. Those are the bond proceeds that are invested separately. So we have some of those invested in a liquid account that we can access quickly. We also have some term investments that are a little bit longer. We didn't go very long on this first tranche of bond sales. Most of those are about 6 to 12-month investments, and those are earning around 4%. So a good amount that we're earning on the bond proceeds, but below the arbitrage rate that we have currently. Any questions on the investment report?
Okay, and those amounts were chosen between liquid and term just based on what we know our schedule is for the first couple bond projects, right?
That is accurate. So we worked with our investment manager at MOCAT to look at essentially a draw schedule that allowed us to draw the money we needed over the next 12 months, but then leave some of it sitting out there a little bit longer. As rates potentially are dropping, they're still going to earn that higher rate over the course of the next 12 months. We didn't go out very far on those, just like I said, about a year on those investments, but that should allow us to earn a little bit more over time. And that's why we chose those amounts.
Great. Thanks.
All right. Final item on the treasurer's report is the balance sheet. And not much to add here on the balance sheet. Just you'll see some overall balances at the bottom that are reflective of year end. What I would note is just again, we do break out the nutrition services, activities, and BAS into those restricted funds, which allows us to monitor those, I think, very effectively. I do like the fact that we do break those out. When we go to final fund balances with the state of Missouri, we are going to shift those back into the other funds. So you'll see those numbers change a little bit between now and when you see the ASBR report, which comes out later in August or September. The overall total will not change. That's what we expended throughout the year, just where they will end up in some of those funds. So any question on the balance sheet?
No, and I agree with you. I like that we split them out for our own purposes. That's helpful.
Very much so.
So.
All right. That is the end of the finance portion of the meeting.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Herzog. Moving on to section 3, facilities. Mr. Grell.
Thank you and good morning. I've got one item this month. It is for a series of easements along the Lee Summit Elementary campus. The school district has 3 parcels along Douglas Street between 1st and 2nd Street. And the city of Lee Summit is currently working on a project to renovate and improve the infrastructure along Douglas. And so they will need some easement area to facilitate those utility improvements. So there is a temporary construction easement being granted through there to allow them to do some work on our property that will be restored. And then also sidewalk easements and what they call a multi-use path easement that allows for various utility infrastructure. So I'll be glad to answer any questions you may have.
No questions, thanks.
All right, thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Grell. Moving on to section 4, the future agenda items. In the past months, this list has been very long. It's shortened quite a bit and grown quite a bit smaller. We've covered a lot of ground in the last 2 or 3 months.
Messy clothes.
So this is much shorter. Anyway, this is just a list to, once again, to allow our board and our community to know the topics and contracts and projects that we're working on and that will come before the board in the coming months. Are there any questions about any items that are on this list?
Nope, thanks.
All right. Well, that concludes all of our agenda items for today's meeting. That concludes today's meeting. Thank you and have a great day.
Have a good day.
Dr. Shelton.
Thank
Bye.
you.